So my research focused on the revenue implications on the lodging industry of severe tornado outbreaks. And so to look at this situation, I used two data sources. I used sources from the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration as well as Smith Travel Research, and pulled those two data sets to really examine what happens in as far as the revenue impact to lodging properties. So particularly, I looked at 2011 because 2011 was one of the most severe tornado seasons to occur. We are all familiar with the Joplin tornado. It happened in 2011, as well as the severe tornadoes that happened in Alabama. So actually in 2011, there were 45 severe EF4, EF5 tornadoes that occurred. I focused on 17 of those counties because that's where Smith Travel Research can provide data to do the cross coordination of revenue. So there were three primary questions I looked at. I looked at what are the impacts on occupancy whenever a severe tornado outbreak happens. I looked at what are the impacts on ADR, or average daily rate, as well as what are the impacts on RevPAR, revenue per room available, after a severe tornado happens. And what I found was very interesting. Most people would think, oh, well, when a severe tornado happens, people don't travel to those areas, so occupancy would immediately decrease. Well, actually, it was just the opposite. Occupancy increased, and in many cases, it increased significantly in the counties that were impacted. But what was more interesting is that the room rates did not necessarily increase, which is really important because when you look at RevPAR is a combination of your occupancy and your room rates. And so you really hope that people aren't taking advantage of a situation when there is a catastrophe. And what I found is that hoteliers are really true to the situation, and there wasn't price gouging that was happening. We did see significant increases in RevPAR, but they were primarily driven by the occupancy increases. So usually what you would see in those impacted areas, you would have obviously people who are displaced from their homes, seeking shelter, but also when a severe event occurs, you have emergency assistance such as FEMA groups or the Red Cross groups who will come into an area and really start using some of those hotel rooms. So the occupancy may not be driven by tourists, but more so from those providing support or help to the disaster area. And I think that's one reason why we saw the room rates kind of keep level, is because when you work with a FEMA group, you're going to have they're going to negotiate a set rate that you can charge. You know, one of the key aspects is that there's an emotional piece to this as well. It's a struggle when you're a general manager and you are seeing great occupancy percentages and great RevPAR numbers, yet you know such tragedy is happening in your community. So there's a human piece to this as well that can be a little challenging to deal with. Plus you have to deal with the fact that some of your employees may have experienced loss of property, or they may have experienced loss of life. And so being able to staff some of those facilities can be a challenge. I think the big piece is looking at what are some of the emotional tolls that can go along with this process as you're trying to keep up with business. I mean, that's a big challenge. One thing that I did find that I thought was interesting is that when you look at the makeup of a community, if they have certain pieces such as strong social structures or strong human capital, like with a population that's highly educated, those areas tend to respond and recover really pretty quickly. more so than communities that don't have those in place. And so I think that plays a key role into helping, if you're looking just at the hotel industry, helping a hotel kind of survive and sustain. I mean, the hospitality industry, we're often the ones who are called on whenever a tragedy does happen, whether it be restaurants donating food, hotels providing places for people to sleep, or in the case of Joplin, a lot of the hotels serve as command stations if they survive, because they have the facilities to do that. So I think just having that understanding of the role that we play is important.